Hi, I'm Christian Triola, author of The Missing Method for Guitar books. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to play the melody to Robert Johnson's Sweet Home Chicago in 3 different regions of the neck. But first, make sure you download the PDFs that go along with this video so that you can follow along. All right, so let's break down what we have here in this melody. So let's take a look at the song. It's Sweet Home Chicago by Robert Johnson, and it's been covered by tons and tons of people, both blues artists, rock people, jazz people. I mean, it's a great tune and everybody wants to be a part of this tune, so it's got a lot of covers out there. So chances are the version you'll hear me playing today might be a little bit different from what you're used to, and that's just because of the many different versions there are out there. So the one we're going to be doing is based mostly on the original Robert Johnson with a couple little modifications to make it slightly easier to read. So if you've used Missing Method 1, 2, or 3 in the note reading series, you'll have no trouble following along with this. If you haven't, I'd recommend getting at least the first one so that you know how to read those notes and kind of take it from there. And then of course you can always follow along because I also tabbed out the melodies as well, so if you don't read as well but you'd like to, this is a good video for you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing you'll want to know is that this song is in E major and does follow a 12-bar blues pattern, which you might expect with a blues tune, of course. And it includes blue notes. Now, blue notes are notes that aren't found diatonically within a scale. And diatonic just means that it'd be part of the scale. So for example, you play a C major scale, you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All those notes you expect to see. If I throw in a C sharp, C, C sharp, D, now we have a note that's outside the scale, which is usually called chromatic. And so the 3 blue notes are technically chromatic notes. They don't fall within the regular scale, but they do fall into the blues scale. So the blue notes, when you relate them back to the major scale, are the 3rd note lowered by a half step. So in the key of E major that we're in, we can expect to hear either a G sharp, which is the regular 3rd, or the blue note G natural. And I know that does come up in the song quite a bit. Another note we might expect is the lowered 5th. And the 5th note in E major is B, E, F, G, A, B. So B. So we might have a B flat thrown in there at some point. And then of course the other blue note could be the lowered 7th. And in the key of E major, that would be a D, because normally in the key of D it's D sharp. So now we're lowering it to D natural again. So that's what we could expect to see. So when you're looking over the page, you see some naturals in there. That's what's going on. Okay, so let's start in open position. So what we've got then is this region of the neck, of course, and the first note in the tune is E. So that's the first note a lot of people learn to play first, just the first string open. And it's held out for most of that measure right to the end, and then we go into a G natural, which is already a blue note that we talked about earlier. When you hear that with the chord, it just gives you a really bluesy sound. After that, we stay on the G natural, go to the regular F sharp, back to E, D natural, which is of course the 7th that we talked about before. Then we go to a regular B. So we don't flat the B here as we might expect to, just have it as usual, and then it ends on the E, and that's just the first phrase that appears in the song. The second phrase is exactly the same thing, but the reason it sounds a little bit different is because of the chord that's played with it. So instead of E major, and then you have this melody, we now have A major, with the same notes, but you can hear it has a different kind of effect. It's like, it sounds like something has changed, even though what you're playing here hasn't. Later on in the melody, in measure 8, we have kind of an unusual rhythm. It's an 8th note tied to 3 8th note triplets. So we have this 3 and triplet. And that's how you would play that, or how you would say it out loud. So we have 1, 2, 3 and triple it. And that leads us in then to the dominant measure, the measure that would have a B7 chord in it. And there we have that D, which again is the lowered 7th. And so that sounds really cool. In fact, the D in the key of E is the lowered 7th, but on a B7 chord, it's the lowered 3rd, which is kind of cool. So we're getting a nice flat 3rd on a B7th chord there when that comes up. So we have D, D, B, open, and then we just play it out. E jumps to the low E on the 4th string, that goes to the lowered 3rd, and then back to the E. All right, so that's the open position, and that's how you would play it up there. So I'm gonna go ahead and play it with the backing track so you can hear what it sounds like in open position. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that's the open position version. So now we're going to take that same exact melody, those same notes, and move that to 5th position. So that means our first finger is going to play that E note on the 2nd string, 5th fret. Then after we get that note, on the same string we can go to the G natural because that's at the 8th fret. And then we can take it from there. We have the F sharp at the 7th fret, back to the E, D on the 3rd string, 7th fret, kind of jump out of position to grab the B on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, and then the low E, we have to jump down to the 5th string, 7th fret. So that is kind of a big jump there on the end, so that part might take you a little practice to get that right each time. So that first and main melody is now I'm getting that with my pinky, that last note, but you could use your 3rd finger as well. Either one will work just fine there. Then later on, when we get to the last measure of the 2nd line, those B's I would still play on the 3rd string, 4th fret. So you have the 8th note followed by the triplet rhythm, 3 and 4 and then you go, or the 7th fret on the 3rd string back to the 4 for that B7 section. For the end, go back to the E in the same spot as the beginning. Reach with the 3rd finger for the low E, then the 1st finger on the G on the 5th fret of the 4th string, and then back. So let me go ahead and play through that whole melody with the backing track in this position. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and that'll give you some idea how to do that in 5th position. And then finally, we're going to take those same notes and move them up to 9th position. So to start off in 9th position, we need to find that same note E. We know it was the open string, 5th fret on the 2nd string. So we go up 5 more. We're on the 9th fret of string number 3. And that's where we're going to play the melody from in this position. So we start at the 9th fret. The G natural is of course at the 12th fret. The F sharp on the 11th, back to the E at the 9th. So we switch strings for 12 and then 9. And then that E is now on the last string, 12th fret. And this time I'm using my pinky again to get that. And of course that's just the octave of the open string. So that's our beginning melody. So I'm going to go ahead and play it in 9th position. Here we go. All right, you might have noticed I changed fingers at the very last second. I'm not sure why. It works just as well, so either third or fourth finger will be fine on getting that last note. Okay, then in the next line, we repeat that with the A chord. And at the end of the second line, we're going to get that B note, which is going to be on the 4th string, 9th fret. Leads us into the B7 measure, which is 12th fret for the D natural. Back to the 9 on the B. And then we finish up with the E note in the same spot we started with, the 9th fret. Jump to the last string, 12th fret. Then we can go to the 10th fret for the G natural on the 5th string, and then back to 12. And that'll get you around that section of the neck. So I'm going to play it without accompaniment first so you can follow along, and then with the backing track. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then of course that repeats. All right, so playing in that position, you can hear it's got kind of a different tonality to it as opposed to these open strings or as opposed to the notes that are right in the middle of the neck. And so that's why it's good to be able to play these melodies in different spots to see which version you think sounds best, or if you're playing it with a backing track or a band or something like that, you can kind of figure out which version is going to mix best with everything else. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate now in the 9th position with the backing track. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that video and you'll have fun playing that relatively simple melody in 3 different regions of the neck. So make sure to like and subscribe, and definitely download that PDF so that you can play along and practice that note reading. And if you want to learn more about note reading, make sure to check out the Missing Method for Guitar note reading series.